From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. Early voting has begun for the May 1st election. Nashvillians are making a yes or no choice about a multi-decade, multi-billion-dollar transit plan for the city. A group called Transit for Nashville is spearheading the effort to pass the proposal. Two of the spokespersons for that group are our guests on Inside Politics. They are State Senator Jeff Yarborough and Metro Councilman Freddie O'Connell. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming on the show.
Thanks, Pat.
Now, is the transit group of supporters starting to splinter or fall apart? You have a council member at large, Erica Gilmore, who says she's changed her mind now and she's going to oppose the transit plan on May 1st. I mean, she is a mayoral candidate, too, for the race later in May. What's going on, Freddie?
Well, first of all, it's a little hard for me to think of myself as a spokesperson for the campaign so much as a policymaker for the city. I do think that in this scenario, what you're seeing is politics play out, right? I think there's a necessity for anyone entering a citywide contest on short notice, like we have just seen. It's gotten even shorter, to find some extra contrast. I was astonished to see within a span of 10 days that Council Lady Gilmore entered the race fully in support of transit and having been a prior person, as we're seeing on this segment, speaking out in favor of it, and then going 10 days later to flipping that position.
Senator Yarborough, she's a pretty high-level defector. I mean, she was one of the first co-sponsors of the resolution that was introduced into the council that is now on the ballot. So how do you deal with that? Even though she is a candidate for mayor, how do you counteract that?
I mean, I think that you probably take, you follow the decision of Gilmore as policymaker as opposed to as political candidate. I mean, I think Freddie's right. This is a short mayor's race that's coming up. It's one of the only ways that you can distinguish yourself. I mean, I think people are smart enough to understand where there's politics and where there's policy. And the policy here is clear that doing something to fix traffic and transit in Nashville is an imperative.
But the defection goes further than that. You also have another prominent African-American elected official in the county who's also a mayoral candidate, who's Representative Harold Love Jr., who serves with you in the General Assembly in the House. He's also now, it seems to be against the transit plan after being sort of for it before. The black vote's supposed to be pretty important in this May vote. If the black community is split, how can you pass this referendum?
Well, I think it's the same answer, and I don't think it's right to say that the vote is split. I mean, I think if you actually go out and talk to people who are in the community that are trying to deal with the issues related to traffic and transit every day, they know that we cannot afford to do nothing.
Councilman O'Connell, the other big issue that's come up in the last couple of days is the Transit for Nashville had a TV ad-on for a very brief period over the past weekend that basically went on the attack against the opposition, talking about some of the people that were supporting them and claiming that the Koch brothers were providing money for them. Now, they say they're not. What do you know that they don't or won't admit?
Nobody knows anything. That's the thing. You've got $750,000 on their latest disclosure that doesn't suggest anything. We do know that Americans for Prosperity not only has a history of being active in Nashville, dating even back to when the Dean administration was trying to propose a modest property tax increase. They were very active in the conversation about the AMP. I think under Lee Beeman's guidance, who is on the record as suggesting to people that a 501c4 does not have to disclose donors at the level that Political Action Committee, like No Tax for Tracks, does, they have figured out how to better cover their tracks.
Senator, why is the outside money, if there is any there, such a big deal? Do you hear from voters that it's a big deal?
Well, I mean, I think that there are unquestionably people on all sides of the debate who have real questions here, but the money that's being spent, the professional opposition to this campaign that's frankly spreading misinformation, is being paid for by an outside group with a Tennessee name. And from all evidence that is available, it's the same group of people who opposed the Improve Act in the legislature. They didn't want Nashville to have the chance to have this referendum in the first place, so it's no surprise they want us to vote no. In fact, they weren't even for the general investment in the Improve Act just to fix roads like 440.
Councilman O'Connell, the other question that I have is that your group, the pro-transit groups, have disclosed that you've raised $2.5 million for this, and this group, even if you take all that money being from out of town, is only $1 million. I mean, you're more than 2 times more money than they do, so why aren't you beating them anyway?
Well, again, I'm not actually a part of that campaign. I haven't been involved in the messaging, the fundraising, any of that, other than from my own role on council, thinking this is solid policy for the city. But it's hard, right? No is always an easy answer when you're making a big decision. I think for anybody, including myself, who grew up in Nashville, there has never been this moment where we could imagine Nashville as a transit city. And yet, if we look at other cities where this has succeeded, and cities that we keep hearing we want to be more like as opposed to those that we want to be less like, right? If you want to contrast Jackson, Mississippi, Birmingham, Alabama, Wichita, Kansas, all of these cities that have not made the type of investment, unlike our peer cities that we ostensibly want to be like, Charlotte and Austin, this is a big deal. But getting people to that place when our car culture has been so dominant, especially when there is $1 million worth of opposition out there, it's a real challenge.
Senator, one of the other issues this week is the Wall Street Journal has written a story this week in one of their editions that basically says a lot of cities are moving away from doing light rail and doing more bus. I know there's some bus improvements in what we're doing, but have those who are pro-transit for this plan made a mistake of not talking more about the buses and try to talk less about light rail?
No, I mean, I think that, look, I think this is a pretty balanced plan that's going forward here. It's got light rail and central corridors where it needs. We've got improved bus service, improved access ride, frankly, improved sidewalks and intersection work. I mean, I think, sure, people are talking about trains because that is what is most new.
It's the shiny object.
But I think that people know that we have to invest in real infrastructure here. We're not going to be able to, you know, do little things around the edges and make a difference in the traffic.
So you're talking to two former chairs of the Nashville MTA board here, right? I mean, Jeff and I had a front row seat for the previous 7 years. When we were on the board, our ridership growth, despite very incremental improvements, outpaced our population growth. I mean, that track record is when we invest in transit,
it's not growing anymore. Why not?
It's because we haven't kept up. At this point, our population growth has actually accelerated and our investment in transit has not. When we actually make the significant investments in transit, and that's, I'd say, again, this is maybe where I depart from the campaign's messaging. Every conversation I have, I talk about my level of enthusiasm for the frequent transit network that starts literally this year. If we pass this year, we start to get a taste of what a meaningful investment in transit looks like in the city.
Metro Councilman Freddie O'Connell is our guest, along with State Senator Jeff Yarborough. They are both supporters of the transit referendum proposal that's on the May 1st ballot. Back to continue our conversation with them after this message.